The sky was filled with dark clouds as the alien fleet hovered above Earth, casting a shadow over the last remaining stronghold of humanity. The invasion had been swift, brutal, and relentless. Cities fell, and civilizations crumbled, all under the crushing weight of the alien queen's command. Her name was Zara, and her reputation was one of terror. Wherever she went, planets fell silent, and life was erased. Zara stood at the helm of her flagship, the Valkyris, her sharp eyes gazing down at the planet below. She could already feel the victory close at hand. The humans were nothing compared to the advanced might of her fleet. Their weapons were weak, their tactics primitive, and their will to fight was no match for the determination of the alien invaders. Behind Zara, in the shadows of her grand throne room, stood her son, Aren, the young prince of the alien empire. He was not yet of age to rule, but in the queen's eyes, he was the future. He had been trained in the ways of war since he could walk, taught to wield the power of his people with skill and ruthlessness. But today, something was different. Aren's eyes drifted from the window, where he could see the lights of Earth's final city. It was burning, just as his mother had ordered, but he could not ignore the strange feeling in his chest, a feeling he had never experienced before. It was a feeling he could not name, but it felt like something was missing. The humans he had watched from his ship, they were not like his people. They fought, yes, but there was something in their eyes that made him pause. Was it hope? His thoughts were interrupted by a sharp voice from behind him. "Arn!" Queen Zare's tone was cold, and her voice carried the weight of command.
"What are you standing there for? Do you not see the victory at hand?"
The humans are weak. Their hope is a flicker in the wind.
"We will crush them." Arne turned to face his mother, his heart heavy. "I know, Mother," he replied quietly. He had always done as commanded, but there was a growing unease in him, something that pulled at his conscience. "You know?" Zare asked, her tone turning icy. She strode toward him, her sharp gaze piercing into him. "Then why are you standing there with such doubt in your eyes?"
There is no room for weakness in our empire.
Arn stiffened. His mother had always been fierce, unrelenting, and he had admired her strength. But today, for the first time, he felt a strange distance from her. She seemed so certain, so sure of herself. But Arane was not so certain anymore. The faces of the humans he had observed, their families, their children, haunted him. They were nothing like his mother had described. They fought not for power, but for survival. Zara's eyes narrowed. "I will not tolerate hesitation, my son," she said firmly. "We will destroy them all."
You will lead the final assault on the city. Do not fail me.
Aren swallowed hard. "Yes, Mother." With a sharp nod, Zara turned and made her way to the command center. Amore watched her leave, the coldness of her footsteps echoing in the silence of the chamber. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the glowing screens that displayed the destruction below. The humans were outmatched, outgunned, but something in Arane's heart told him that this battle was more than just about survival. It was about something deeper, something his mother could never understand. Barin shook his head, as if trying to rid himself of these thoughts. He had no choice but to obey. His mother was the queen. She knew what was best for the Empire. He had been raised to serve her, to follow her commands without question. But as he turned to leave, something unexpected happened. A voice from below, soft yet powerful, reached his ears. "Help us!" Arn froze, his heart skipping a beat. The voice was not from a machine. It was human. His eyes widened in shock. He had never heard a human speak to him directly before, let alone in such a desperate tone. The voice called out again. "Clearer this time. Please, someone help us." Aren's curiosity got the best of him. He knew he should ignore it, to follow his mother's orders without question, but something urged him forward. He moved toward the communication panel and activated it. A young woman appeared on the screen, her face filled with fear but also determination. She was holding a child in her arms, the same look of fear etched on both their faces. "Who are you?" Aaron asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. The woman's eyes widened when she saw him.
You're not one of them, are you? I am a prince of the alien empire, Aaron replied coldly, though his heart did not feel as cold as his words. What do you want?
The woman's voice trembled as she spoke.
Please, I don't know what your people want, but we're just trying to survive.
"My daughter." She paused to glance at the little girl in her arms. "She's sick. Please, help us." Arneman stared at the woman, her plea pulling at him in a way he couldn't understand. It wasn't like the humans he had been taught to fear. There was no hatred, no anger in her voice, just a raw, vulnerable plea for mercy. Before he could respond, he heard the door to the room open behind him, and the unmistakable sound of his mother's voice filled the air. "Arn!"
What are you doing? Zara's voice was sharp with authority. Arn turned sharply, the communication screen still showing the human woman's face.
He hesitated. For a moment it felt like time itself had stopped. Then, without thinking, he did something that shocked even himself. He disconnected the screen and ran toward the exit. "Arn." Zara's voice followed him, but it was too late. Aaron had already made his choice. He rushed down the hallways of the ship, his mind racing. He knew what he had done was a betrayal, but something inside him told him he had to do it. He didn't know why, but he had to protect the human woman and her child. They were not the enemy. He had seen the truth in their eyes. Aaron reached the docking bay where a small shuttle awaited him. Without another word, he boarded the craft and activated the thrusters. As the ship began to descend toward Earth, Aaron's mind raced with questions. What was he doing? Why did he feel this way? The city below was in flames, but somewhere within that chaos, he could sense something different, something he had never felt before. A chance to change the course of history. The shuttle descended toward the burning city, and as the smoke and flames rose up to meet him, Aaron prepared himself for the unimaginable. He was about to face his mother, the most powerful being in the universe. And yet, despite the fear that gripped him, a strange feeling of hope lingered in his chest. The battle had only just begun, but for Aaron, it was already a battle of the heart. The shuttle descended through the smoke-filled sky, its engines whirring steadily. Aaron's hands gripped the controls tightly, his pulse quickening as he gazed down at the ruins of the human city below. It was like something out of a nightmare. Fires raged across the landscape, buildings collapsed into dust, and the distant sounds of explosions echoed through the air. Yet, despite all the destruction, a strange pull in his chest led him forward. The human woman's face lingered in his mind, her desperate plea for help echoing through his thoughts. Her eyes had been filled with fear, yes, but they also held something else. Something he had never expected from a human. Hope. It was the kind of hope he had been taught to destroy. The kind of hope that didn't belong in this war. He had broken his mother's orders. He had broken the laws of the Empire. He had chosen to protect a human, to fight for something he didn't fully understand. But even now, as the shuttle hurtled closer to the war-torn ground, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was right. That this was what he was supposed to do. The shuttle landed with a soft thud in a small, empty plaza on the outskirts of the city. The air was thick with smoke, and the ground was scorched black. Aaron hesitated for a moment, his hand hovering over the door release. His heart pounded in his chest. Was this really what he wanted? To risk everything for a woman and her child? The door to the shuttle opened with a hiss, and the cool air of the ruined city rushed in. Aaron stepped out cautiously, his boots crunching against the charred earth. His eyes scanned the area, but there was no sign of the woman or her child. The city was eerily silent, save for the distant hum of alien ships overhead. The once bustling streets were now nothing more than a maze of wreckage and devastation. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the nerves that suddenly threatened to overwhelm him. He had been trained for battle, for war, for destruction. But this was different. He wasn't here to fight. He wasn't here to conquer. He was here to protect. Aron's gaze shifted to the horizon, where a group of alien soldiers were moving through the wreckage, searching for survivors. His stomach twisted with dread. He knew that if his presence was discovered, it would mean certain death for him. But he couldn't turn back now. He had made a choice, and he had to see it through. He turned to the left and started walking, his eyes searching for any sign of the woman. The streets were lined with broken glass and debris, and the air smelled of burning metal and plastic. It felt like the world was on fire, and the flames were only growing stronger. After several minutes of walking, Aron finally spotted something, a figure moving cautiously between two ruined buildings. It was the woman. She was holding the child tightly in her arms, her eyes darting nervously from side to side. Aron's heart skipped a beat. He had found them. He took a step forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're safe now." The woman froze, her body tensing as she turned to face him. Her eyes were wide with surprise, but there was no fear in them, only relief. She took a slow, hesitant step toward him, her gaze never leaving his face. "You came," she said softly. "You came to help us." Aron nodded, though his heart was heavy with uncertainty. "I didn't want to leave you alone," he said. "I couldn't let you suffer like this." The woman's expression softened, and she took another step toward him. "I don't know who you are, or why you're here, but thank you."
"We don't have much, but we'll find a way to repay you." Aron's eyes flickered to the child in her arms, a small girl with wide, curious eyes.
She looked no older than 5, yet she had seen more destruction than any child should ever have to endure. The little girl stared up at him, and for the first time since he had left his mother's ship, Aron felt something stir within him. It wasn't fear or doubt. It was something else. Something that made his chest tighten in a way he couldn't explain. The woman lowered her child to the ground, and the little girl clung to her mother's leg. "My name is Eliza," the woman said, her voice quiet but filled with gratitude. "This is my daughter Lily." "I'm Aron," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm here to help." Eliza studied him for a long moment, her gaze flicking between his face and the weapon on his side. She seemed to be trying to make sense of him, but there was no hostility in her eyes. Instead, there was only a kind of cautious hope. "You're not like them," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not like the others." Aron hesitated, unsure how to respond. He had been taught that humans were weak, that they were nothing but obstacles to be removed. He had been taught to fear them, to destroy them. But now, standing here in the ashes of their world, he realized that he had been wrong. They were not his enemies. They were survivors, just like him. "I don't want to fight anymore," Aron said quietly, his voice shaking slightly. "I don't want to destroy anymore. I just want to protect you." Eliza's eyes softened, and she placed a hand gently on his arm. "Then you're already a part of us," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "You don't have to be alone anymore. You don't have to be on their side." Aron's heart swelled with something he had never known. It was a feeling of belonging, of acceptance. It was a feeling that, for the first time, made him question everything he had been taught. Eliza looked down at Lily, who was holding onto her leg, peeking up at Aron with a shy smile. "We don't have much," Eliza said, her voice thick with emotion, "but we have each other." Aron swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. He had never known anything like this. He had never known what it felt like to care for someone other than himself, to protect something other than his own interests. But now, standing here with Eliza and Lily, He realized that there was more to life than the Empire, more to life than war. I won't let them hurt you, Arn said firmly, his voice strong with conviction. I'll keep you safe. Eliza smiled softly, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you. Arn glanced back at the destroyed city, his mind racing. The aliens were still out there, still searching for survivors, still hunting down every last human. But now, for the first time, Arne felt something he had never felt before. A desire to fight for something. Not against it. He would protect these people, and he would make sure that the Empire, his mother, would never get the chance to destroy them again. The days passed slowly in the ruined city. Arn, Eliza, and Lily had found a place to shelter, an abandoned building on the edge of what had once been a bustling district. The walls were cracked and broken, and the air was thick with dust, but it was safe. The distant hum of alien ships still filled the sky, but there were no signs of immediate danger, for now they were hidden. Arn spent most of his time outside, watching the movement of the alien forces from a distance. He had come to realize that the invasion was far from over. Zara, his mother, would not rest until humanity was completely crushed. The Queen was ruthless, and her forces were relentless. But Arn was no longer part of that force. He had made his choice. He was now a fugitive. Every day he fought to control the fear that gnawed at him. He was terrified of what would happen if Zara found out that he had betrayed her. He had never seen his mother so angry. She had raised him to be cold, to be a weapon of destruction. He had seen her raise her blade countless times, and he knew how quickly she could turn her wrath on anyone who disobeyed her. If she found out he was helping the humans, there would be no forgiveness. But as the days went on, his fear began to fade, replaced by something else, something stronger. The more time he spent with Eliza and Lily, the more he realized that this was where he belonged. The human woman's warmth, her care for her child, and her quiet strength were things he had never experienced. They were things his mother had never shown him. In their company, he found something he had longed for, his entire life. Peace. He didn't know how long they could remain hidden. The alien forces were still searching the city, moving methodically from building to building, scanning for any signs of life. Arn knew that it was only a matter of time before they found Eliza and Lily. But for now, they had a fragile sense of safety. It was enough to keep going. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Aaron sat with Eliza and Lily in the quiet of their makeshift shelter. The child had fallen asleep on her mother's lap, and Eliza stroked her daughter's hair gently, her expression soft. Arn watched them in silence, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead.
We can't stay here forever, he said finally, his voice low. Eliza looked up at him, her eyes filled with concern.
I know, she replied softly. But what can we do?
We have nothing. We're just trying to survive.
Arn shifted uncomfortably, his hands clenched at his sides. I can help you, he said, his voice firm. I know the alien forces better than anyone. I can get you to safety.
Eliza shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with doubt. You're one person. How can you fight an entire fleet?
We've seen what they can do. They won't stop until they've destroyed us all.
Arn met her gaze, his jaw set with determination. I'm not fighting them for you, he said quietly.
I'm fighting for myself. Or us.
I've made a choice, Eliza, and I won't let them take you.
Eliza stared at him for a long time, her face etched with a mixture of gratitude and concern. You don't owe us anything, she whispered.
For helping us. Arn didn't respond right away.
He didn't know why he was so determined. He had never felt this way before. His entire life had been about duty. Duty to his mother, duty to the Empire, duty to the conquest. But now, his heart had shifted. He had chosen to protect these people, These humans, who had shown him something he had never known. They had shown him kindness, and in return he would do whatever it took to keep them safe. As the night grew darker, a sense of unease settled over the group. Barn knew that something was coming. He could feel it in his bones. The alien forces had been scouring the city for days, and their search was becoming more intense. They would find them soon. Arn couldn't help but wonder what would happen if they did. Would Eliza and Lily be killed without hesitation? Would the aliens even care that he had once been part of the Force? Would they spare him, or would they see his defection as a betrayal, punishable by death? The fear of what might happen was overwhelming, but R.A. couldn't let it control him. He had made a vow to protect them. He had to hold on to that promise, even in the face of the unknown. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. A low hum, distant but unmistakable. Arn's head snapped up, his senses alert. The alien ships were approaching. He could hear the faint whir of their engines, the unmistakable sound of their scanners as they moved through the city, searching for survivors. "They're getting closer," Arn muttered under his breath. He stood up quickly, his heart racing.
We don't have much time.
Eliza's eyes widened with fear. What do we do? Arn glanced around the room, trying to think quickly.
The shelter wasn't much of a hiding place. It wouldn't take long for the aliens to find them if they started searching in this area. He needed to get them out. Now. "There's a tunnel system under the city," he said quickly.
It's old, but it's hidden. I can take you there.
"It leads out of the city." Eliza didn't hesitate. She stood up, her hand tightening around Lily as she nodded. "Let's go." Arn led them through the crumbling building, his mind racing as he searched for the hidden entrance. It was a narrow, secretive tunnel, meant for escape during the earliest days of the war. Few knew about it, and even fewer had ever used it. But Arn had studied the city's layout, and he knew exactly where to go. The tunnel entrance was hidden beneath a pile of rubble, but Arain quickly moved it aside and pushed open the heavy door. The dark passage stretched out before them, and the air smelled of damp earth and old stone. "Stay close," Arn warned as they entered the tunnel. He could hear the ships getting closer, their engines growing louder. "We'll need to move fast." Eliza clutched Lily tightly, her eyes wide with fear. But Arn could see the trust in her gaze, and it gave him the strength to keep moving forward. He had promised to protect them, and he would do whatever it took to keep that promise. The tunnel was narrow and winding, and R.A. led them through the darkness, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. As they moved deeper, the sounds of the city grew fainter, replaced by the muffled hum of the alien ships above. But the fear didn't leave Aaron. He knew they weren't out of danger yet. The aliens would be searching the tunnels soon enough. They walked for what felt like hours, the air growing colder and thinner as they went deeper underground. Arain's muscles ached from the constant movement, but he pushed himself harder, unwilling to stop until they were safe. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached the end of the tunnel. A small door stood before them, and Aaron pressed his hand to it, feeling the cool metal beneath his fingers. "This is it," he said, his voice a whisper. "We're almost out." Eliza nodded, but her eyes were filled with uncertainty. "Where does this lead?" "To a safe place," Arn said, his voice steady. "It's not far." "Once we're through, we'll be safe." He pushed open the door, revealing the faint glow of the outside world. The sky was still dark, but the distant sound of the alien ships had faded. They had made it, at least for now. Arn stepped out into the open air, the cool breeze brushing against his face. He could still feel the weight of the danger hanging over them, but for the first time in days, he allowed himself to breathe. They were safe. For now. The night air was cool as Arn, Eliza, and Lily emerged from the tunnel into the relative safety of the open land outside the city. The landscape stretched out before them, dark and quiet. The distant hum of alien ships could still be heard in the sky, but their immediate threat seemed to have passed. For now. Arn took a deep breath, his body aching from the tension and the long hours of travel. The last few days had felt like a blur of hiding, moving, and running. But despite the exhaustion weighing him down, there was a sense of peace in the air now. The escape had been successful. They were no longer trapped in the burning city, at least not for the moment. Eliza, holding Lily close to her, glanced around warily.
"Where do we go from here?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with both fear and uncertainty. Aaron didn't have a clear answer, but he had a plan. A destination.
He had heard of a small, secluded settlement not far from the city, hidden deep in the mountains. It was a place that many survivors had sought refuge in, a place far enough removed from the alien forces to remain unnoticed. He had never been there himself, but he knew of it.
"It's a safe place,"
Aaron said, his voice steady.
A small community. They've kept hidden from the invaders for a long time.
Eliza nodded, but Aaron could see the doubt in her eyes. She was a mother, and she was scared. She was trying to be strong, but her fear was still there. It was only natural. Aaron understood it all too well. He had his own fears. Fears for himself, for Eliza, for Lily, and for everything they had yet to face.
"Let's go then," Eliza said quietly. "We don't have much time."
They began walking, the silence around them broken only by the crunch of their feet against the dry earth. Aaron led the way, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. The last thing they needed was to be caught off guard by the alien forces. He could still hear the faint sound of the ships above, their engines growing fainter as they moved away from the city. But the quiet was deceptive. Amore knew that the threat was far from gone. Zara would stop at nothing to hunt him down and punish him for his betrayal. His mother would never forgive him for abandoning the invasion, for protecting the very creatures she had sworn to annihilate. The punishment for defection was severe, and Aaron had betrayed not only his mother, but his entire people. But now, none of that mattered. The humans needed him, and he would do whatever it took to keep them safe, no matter the cost. As they walked through the night, Aaron's mind raced. The settlement wasn't far, but it felt like an eternity. Every sound made him flinch. Every shadow seemed like a threat. The thought of the aliens discovering their trail kept him on edge. He couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Not now. Hours passed and the small group didn't stop. Eliza remained quiet, but Aaron could feel her growing fatigue. Lily had fallen asleep in her arms, her tiny hands clutching the front of her mother's shirt. She looked so innocent, so unaware of the horrors that had unfolded around them. Aaron wished he could protect her from all of it, from the destruction, from the invasion, from the war. But there was only so much he could do. Finally, as dawn began to break, the mountains came into view. They were distant but visible, their jagged peaks towering above the landscape. Aaron's heart lifted at the sight. They were almost there. As they approached the base of the mountains, the first light of morning touched the sky. The soft pink and orange glow illuminated the land, casting long shadows across the ground. It was beautiful in a way that Aaron had never appreciated before. The beauty of the world, of Earth, had always been something he had overlooked. But now, with everything at stake, he saw it clearly. He looked over at Eliza, who had slowed her pace. She was exhausted. She had been through so much. Her eyes were heavy with sleep, but her grip on Lily never wavered. "We'll rest soon," Aaron said softly, his voice reassuring. "We're close now." Eliza nodded, her face tired but determined. She was a survivor. She had to be. They pressed on, moving slowly but steadily. The mountain path grew steeper as they climbed, the air thinner and colder. Arn's legs burned from the strain, but he pushed through. The sounds of the alien ships had disappeared, but the threat was still there, lingering just beyond the horizon. At last, they reached the entrance to the hidden settlement. It was tucked into a narrow valley, surrounded by tall trees and steep cliffs. The settlement was small but well fortified, with makeshift barricades and camouflaged huts scattered throughout. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The people here had learned to survive by staying out of sight, keeping quiet, and working together. Aaron approached the gate cautiously, his eyes scanning the area. He could see figures moving behind the barriers, watching, waiting. As they drew closer, a man appeared at the gate. He was older, his face lined with the marks of survival, but his eyes were sharp. Arn stopped a few feet from the gate. "I'm Arn," he said. "I need your help." The man studied him for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he looked Arn up and down. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Come in," he said, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. "We don't turn away anyone in need." Arn stepped forward, guiding Eliza and Lily into the settlement. The gate creaked open, and the man stepped aside to let them in. The people inside were wary but kind. They had seen the worst of the war, and they knew what it meant to survive. Some looked at Aaron with suspicion, but most simply offered a quiet nod or a brief greeting. They were survivors, and they understood what it meant to help one another. Eliza sank down onto a wooden bench, her exhaustion finally catching up with her. Lily was still asleep in her arms, her small face peaceful, despite everything that had happened. Areen sat next to them, his mind still racing. He didn't know how long they would be safe here, but for the first time in days, he felt a sense of relief. They were safe, at least for now. A woman came over to them, her face soft but filled with concern. She was older than Eliza, her hair streaked with gray, but her movements were gentle. "You've been through a lot," she said, her voice warm. "Let me get you some food." "You must be starving." Aaron shook his head.
We're fine, thank you.
"We just need to rest." The woman nodded, but there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. "Rest as long as you need," she said softly. "You're safe here. For now." Aaron looked at Eliza, who had already closed her eyes, her body sinking into the bench as sleep finally overtook her. He could see the exhaustion on her face, the weight of everything she had been through, and in that moment, he realized how much he had changed, how much his view of the world had shifted. He had once seen the humans as enemies, weak and insignificant. But now, they were the ones he had come to protect. They were the ones who had shown him the true meaning of strength. For the first time in his life, Areen didn't feel like a weapon. He felt like a person, and he knew, deep down, that he would do whatever it took to keep these people safe. They were his family now, and no matter what came next, he would fight for them, just as they had fought for each other. As the sun rose higher in the sky, Areen allowed himself a moment of peace. The road ahead would be hard, and the dangers were far from over, but for now, they were safe, and that was enough.